The year was 1853 when Vincent van Gogh was born in the Netherlands. Exactly 1 year to the day before Vincent was born, his brother was born dead. His parents chose to name his older brother Vincent van Gogh, and when the painter was born, the name was reused for the younger son. As one can assume, this surely would have mentally affected the Vincent we know. By living as a replacement of his dead brother, seeing your own name already on a tombstone must have been strange for the young Vincent. His father was a pastor, and so for most of his childhood he felt called to serve the church. However, he experienced several tragedies and found a new path to happiness through art. After some time studying and building his talent for art, he met up his brother, Theo, in Paris. Theo managed an art gallery, and this was very helpful for Vincent's career. Through Theo's connections, Vincent began to network with other Impressionist painters. He learned from them and even picked up on some of their techniques and styles. Through this, he found his own voice. Van Gogh was optimistic in creating a small art group in the south of Arles. Unfortunately, Paul Gauguin was the only artist to join him in the Yellow House. Van Gogh and Gauguin began to hit a downfall as Vincent lost his sanity. Gauguin grew impatient with him. Articles claimed Vincent cutting his own ear off, but because he had lost his temper with Gauguin. But some rumors claim that Gauguin had in fact sliced Vincent's lobe off during an argument, possibly about their artwork. Vincent suffered from manic depression, bipolar disorder, hypergraphia, sunstrokes, and epilepsy. For some time, Vincent was poisoning himself, thinking he was self-medicating to cure his issues. However, the absinthe he drank in order to calm his anxiety and depression was extremely toxic. And not to mention, the amount of paint he ate, of mostly yellow paint that contained high levels of lead, did grave damage to his health. Both of these forms of self-poisoning largely influenced his artwork. The absinthe caused him to see mostly everything in yellow tones, which explains why most of his paintings are yellow. As for the lead poisoning, well, this caused him to see a sort of halo around any light, which is what created most of his famous pieces, like A Starry Night. After some time of struggling to live with this day-to-day challenge, Vincent shot himself in the head. There are, however, some rumors that suggest his death wasn't a suicide, but in fact a murder that could have been easily covered up by his medical history. Vincent created several self-portraits throughout his artistic career. This self-portrait in particular was created in 1889. The work was painted at the same time as Starry Night, and you can see the similarity in his brushstrokes. He organically uses the swirly wind-like lines to create the background of his painting. The same movement is carried within his jacket, but in a more broken up and loose way. The entire painting feels pretty monochromatic. The tones are all in like a dull bluish green. His hair and skin, despite being more of a nude and red, carry that same color value and hue as his clothing in the background do. You can even see the color of his hair subtly used in the blue tones to create texture and depth. He appears to be a strapping man, well-groomed, and dressed decently. His gaze feels as if he's looking right at you, but may also have his left eye veering off to the side. He is serious, but not too serious, to make you want to know more about him. Pablo Picasso was another European master painter. He was born in Spain a few years before Van Gogh died. In 1881, the painter José Ríos y Velasco became the father of Pablo Picasso. So in a sense, you can say Picasso was born to be an artist. It was in his blood. Throughout his early years, Picasso studied at some of the best art academies Spain had to offer. Just as Van Gogh did, Picasso studied the works of current and past artists, constantly visiting art museums to see what he could pick up on. He was constantly working on his artistic style and technique. Again, like Van Gogh, Picasso moved to Paris, where he too fell under the guidance of a man with connections into the art world. Despite never having met, Picasso and Van Gogh shared some similarities, like being starving artists, being too poor, but that didn't stop them from creating art because it was their passion. Picasso's art style drastically evolved with time. He played with different color palettes, from using only blues to painting with only rose tones. Later, with the help of Gertrude Stein, he became influenced by African art as a way to differentiate from the Western art culture. He then transformed this style into analytical cubism, being simplified geometric shapes to create a composition. Then synthetic cubism came to be as a collage of shapes coming together to create an image. Picasso is known to be a ladies' man. He loved women, but also disrespected women, due to the toxic masculine culture he grew up in Spain. He kept this lifestyle of mistresses, wives, girlfriends, and prostitutes as inspiration for his artwork. Most of the women he slept with or fell in love with were his models, his muses. It seemed Picasso never took a break to just be single once he was out of a relationship due to death or separation. He would soon find a new woman to be with. Even when he was with these women, he found mistresses or flings to exercise his sexuality. Pablo Picasso's self-portrait was created about 20 years after Van Gogh's. Funny enough, they both seem to be wearing similar clothes, a white button-up with a jacket on top. Very classic. Both men have a similar gaze towards the viewer, and one of their eyes has this highlight in the center of it. Picasso's portrait is far more rugged and geometric, with dark straight lines outlining his features and the details of his clothing. Picasso has also kept a minimal color palette, except his is far more warmer than Vincent's portrait. His brushstrokes are also fairly visible, but aren't as prominent. They seem a bit more smudged in together, as if Picasso wasn't afraid to get his fingers into the work. Both men depict themselves serious, but oddly have an alluring look to them. At first glance, you may think they are a bit too stiff to talk to, but the more you look into their eyes, you feel an urge to know more about them. Thank you for listening.